Good afternoon. I know I didn't tell you guys we were going to have notes today in class. I kind of forgot. But I am going to be sending the text out as soon as I get these done. We are actually moving into conics. And a conics is basically, it's a type of a graph. Parabolas are a form of a conics. Circles, hyperbolas, all that kind of stuff. We're going to get into graphing that stuff. But the first thing we need to start with is looking at distance and midpoints and how to find them. So the first thing is the distance formula. And with distance formula, it's basically the distance between 2 points on a coordinate grid. And how we find that is distance is going to equal the square root of x squared minus x1, x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So this is the x coordinate of the second point minus the x coordinate of the first point. You're squaring that. Plus the y coordinate of the second point minus the y coordinate of the first point, and you're squaring that. Midpoint formula now is basically that's the midpoint of 2 points on a coordinate grid. So if I have 2 points on a coordinate grid or a line segment, if I want to find the midpoint, this is how I do it. The midpoint is found by x1 plus x2 over 2 divided by y1 plus y2 over 2. And we're going to use both of these formulas to do all the problems we're going to be doing tomorrow. And it's going to require some extra thought because I'm not going to give you a specific example, and I have a couple problems on the homework that are going to make it a little bit more difficult. Okay? So it says Kyle used a coordinate grid to draw a map of a school. He plotted the gymnasium at point G, which is negative 12, 7, and the cafeteria at point C, which is 23. What are the coordinates of the playground if it is located midway between the gym? Not sure why that's doing that. Yeah, let's delete that. I don't even know what that is. There we go. Okay, so what are the coordinates of the playground if it is located midway between the gymnasium and the cafeteria? So you have a point, and we're going to call this point G, and you have the cafeteria, which is here, which is point C. We know the gymnasium is halfway between, and they want to know what those coordinates are. So how we're going to do that then is we're going to use the midpoint formula, which we just looked at was x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Okay? So let's plug them in. So you have negative 12 plus 20 over 2, and you have 7 plus 3 over 2. Negative 20 plus 12 is going to be 8 over 2, and 7 plus 3 is 10 over 2, which means that my midpoint then is at the point 4, 5. And there's your answer. Pretty simple, not too hard, okay? This is a pretty basic question. Now we look at example number 2. It says George made a map of Texas using a coordinate grid. Each unit on his grid represents 10 miles. Let me delete this thing again. Alright, so George plotted point D for Dallas at 1312, and it says to represent Dallas, and point H at 18, negative 11 to represent Houston. Find the distance between Dallas and Houston. Okay, so we know the distance formula. All right, and it's on the other page, so I'm not going to rewrite it because it is somewhat long. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start plugging that stuff in. So D is the square root, x2 is 18 minus 13, and I'm squaring that, plus y2 is negative 11 plus 12 squared. And now I'm going to start simplifying. 18 minus 13 is 5 squared plus negative 11 and 12 is 1 squared. This is going to be 25 plus 1, which is the square root of 26. Okay? And so now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to, we are actually going to find the square root of 26. All right? So perfect squares that go into 26, there are none. All right? So we're going to say, and we're going to round to the nearest tenth. All right? So the square root of 26 is going to be 5. I'm actually going to round to the nearest hundredth on this one. Actually, it would be the nearest tenth. So that's 5.1. Okay? Now, this is telling you, remember, we're working on a grid. Okay? And on that grid, it's just boxes. But it tells us that each unit on the grid is worth 10 miles. Well, this is telling us that we're 5.1. We are 5.1 units. That's the distance between the two. All right, is 5.1 units. So now we need to determine how many miles we're at. And in order to do that, I'm going to take the number of units and I'm going to multiply that by, we're going to take that and we're going to multiply that by 10. And we have a mistake somewhere. All right, let's double check this real quick. X2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So you got x2 is 18, x1 is 13, so 18 minus 13 is, that's 5. Oh, yeah, you guys missed my mistake too, I bet. So let me erase this because we actually made a mistake here. And it's good for you guys to see that mistakes happen and how to catch them. Minus. Alright, so let's actually fix this real quick. So this is the square root of 5 squared plus negative 11 minus 12 is going to be negative 23 squared. And this is going to be 25 plus 23 squared. 23 times 23 is 529. And it's going to be positive because it's a negative being squared, okay? So this is the square root. 25 plus 529 is going to be 554. Okay? So now, and you guys are more than welcome to use a calculator, right? So the square root of 554 is approximately then 23.5 units. Okay? So this is where we made our mistake. So, when we find the distance, we're finding the distance on the grid. We're not necessarily finding the actual legitimate distance, which is what they're asking for here. They're telling you to find the actual distance, not the distance on the grid. So this is our distance on the grid. Well, then it tells us that each unit on the grid represents 10 miles. So in order to find the true distance then, I'm going to have to take the number of units we had, and I'm going to multiply that by 10, which means my distance then is going to be 235 miles. Okay? So, I hope the mistake didn't mess you up. I don't think it should have. It was just a simple computational error. And you guys make them all the time. I make them all the time. It happens. Okay? So, this is how you find the distance now. Alright? And this is going to help you out when we start working with some stuff. Because what's going to happen is I may give you 1 point. And I may give you a midpoint. And I'm going to tell you to find the other point. Okay? Or I may give you 1 point and give you the distance, and tell you to find all possible points that would fit that distance. Okay? So there's a couple of different ways we can go with this. So you need to truly understand the distance and how to find the distance, and then the midpoint and how to find the midpoint. Okay? I hope you guys have a great night. I will probably not get to the test tonight. It'll be this weekend. I will get them done this weekend, and we'll go from there, okay? And I'm going to work on getting your test corrections done in the next day or two as well. So have a great night, and I will actually see you guys tomorrow.